Right. Thank you, Tim, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the listeners out there. So just going through the highlights. Venture at the moment is building an iron ore mine on the west coast of Tasmania. So we're looking at first shipment towards the end of Q1 2021 at Riley mine. We've just recently had some great exploration success at Golden Grove North in Western Australia. First 3 drill holes at our Odin Prospect underneath a drill intersection of 22 metres at 0.8 gold, 0.6% copper, 1.3% zinc, has hit significant zones of sulfides, and we're along strike from, I suppose, one of Australia's major VMS deposits in Golden Grove. I'll talk a bit more about that. Post the drilling there at Golden Grove, we're looking to take the rig across to Coolant Project, 250 kilometres east of Perth, and we've got what looks like potentially could be a Boddington style target there. We've got a great joint venture with Chalice, who once they'd made a Julimar discovery, had recognised the potential of our South-West project, so they're going to be testing out what looks like a Julimar lookalike. And what's been, I suppose, the flagship of the company for many years, since 2007, the Mount Lindsay Tin-Tungsten Project. So we've got exposure there to EV metals with the tin and critical minerals with tungsten. Next slide, please. Thank you. Current market cap's around that $43 million figure. We've got 5 in the bank. Major shareholders of Republic, which is an investment fund in Singapore. And also we have Dale Elphinston, who's obviously famous in Tasmania for converting Caterpillar equipment from surface to underground. So he's second biggest shareholder. Next slide. The board there, it's the same people who have been involved since the start of the company, which was listed in 2006, which means we've still got all that knowledge and experience of the Tasmanian assets at Mount Lindsay and Riley, and hence we were able to start looking at Riley quite quickly once the iron ore price came up early last year. So it's good to have that team still there to help us move forward. And obviously got a great track record in other companies and discoveries, Australia and internationally. Next slide, please. The first now onto the Riley iron ore mine. The next slide again. The project is based on the west coast of Tasmania. In highlighted there in red is a 120 kilometre long bitumen road to the port of Burnie. Riley has all the permits in place. We have road access and port access, and we've engaged Shore Contracting to do the mining, the local mining and the civil contractor, and Cube to do all the transport and ship loading at the port of Burnie. Thank you. Riley is very simply a 1.5 metre thick laterite deposit draped along the landscape. Its entirety is sitting there on the screen at the moment. It's 1.6 million tonnes. It's the same grade as FMG's super special fines. So it's an ideal product. So as you can see, it's a no strip ratio. So very straightforward. Next slide, please. The project, and there's another picture there of a Caterpillar excavator digging the top of the ore zone, that loose gravel. We trialled dry screening earlier this year. That was successfully completed. But we're forging ahead with building the wet screening plant. So the raising we did recently is focused on getting that plant into getting commissioned by late January next year. And so the dry screening wasn't as cost effective as the wet screening, so the board's chosen to stick with the original concept. The project, just in terms of numbers, in 2019, back in August, we had a feasibility study completed at $90 US, and the project made $30 million. At today's price, we're looking probably double that amount. But the main focus now for the company is to get that finalised, that financing for the wet screening plant. Next slide, please. And once that is secured, then we can get the plant completed. That's a picture there which shows the construction a couple of days ago. It's a nice blue sky on the west coast, which in itself is a bit of a rare thing, but it's good weather to be building, and we're going to be pouring concrete next week. So we're certainly starting to look like a mine site. First haulage will probably be, you know, around about that early February. Like I said, first shipment sort of targeting mid-March at the moment is in schedule. So great opportunity for the company to become a producer with this project. It's a small niche project. It's capped in high iron ore price. So great opportunity for us to establish, I suppose, a base load valuation around that $30 million or whatever the project is netting out at that point in time. Next slide, please. Now just moving on to the Golden Grove North project, which is our main exploration play back in WA. And we picked up this project back in October 2018, purchased it from prospectors and other private groups. And we, no one's had this sort of 300 square kilometres sitting north of Golden Grove in their own possession, probably for a number of decades now. So it's a rare opportunity. There's been exploration for, obviously back in the 90s, we had exploration for VMS style, again, just shallow exploration in a lot of holes, 900 of them were, you know, not many went below 100 metres. And some drill for iron ore, some drill for gold, some drill for nickel. So it's a real hodgepodge of data. We had to work our way through those data sets to start generating our own targets. Next slide, please. And what we saw is that with surface mapping, rock chipping, we started delineating some targets there like Neptune to the south, which is, believe it or not, drilled by Dalrymple back in the 1990s, and the project was Golden Grove North as well, same name. So by coincidence, we also had the Vulcan targets, which we did some EM on, and we started getting some EM anomalies sitting underneath some very interesting surface anomalies in terms of zinc and copper, and some similarities to other prospects. So just moving on to the next slide. What we've done post that airborne EM is to do the surface EM. We did that at Vulcan West and Vulcan North and Vulcan. But then we, back in mid-September, acquired the what we now call the AUKUS prospect. In AUKUS, we've just only completed the surface EM, and we got a plate there which is about 800 metres long. The drill hole, historic drill hole that I mentioned previously, sits at the northern end of that plate on the edge of it. And we've drilled those 3 holes on that line at the moment. But we've been expanding our, because we only did a bit of surface EM on around Vulcan West, Vulcan North specifically, we've been filling the gaps. So as you move from AUKUS to Vulcan North, we're finding more strong conductors, and we're also going to push towards the south. So it's looking like a 5 kilometre long VMS type of target zone. So it's akin to what the Scuddles, Gossan Hill area is like. So these VMS deposits tend to occur in clusters, and we're starting to see the early evidence of that. Moving on to the next slide. There's the first hole, first metre into the mineralisation, and we've got up to over 50% sulphides. With certainly the portable XRF is indicating that there's zinc and copper in those sulphides. The assays are now, samples are in the lab, so we expect some results in the next 2 to 3 weeks in that first batch of drilling. The next after that area, we moved on to the south, but just talking about these holes of AUKUS in the first line, you can see we're at 22 metres at 0.8. The drilling was done by an iron ore company, set depth down to 60 metres, 1 kilometre long spaced lines. They hit some sulphide, they assayed them, and those are the numbers I've got in front of you on the screen there. But to drill below that, hit 33 metres of sulphides, and then another 23 metres below that again, and then 69 metres of sulphide mineralisation was pretty successful, pretty exciting for the group, because we managed to get down dip extension very quickly. The next hole will be a diamond hole, being beyond the capabilities of the rig we have here. But what we're going to do is we're going to move to the south and drill 300 metres away, and that's the central anomaly, which is the strongest part of the EM and also of the soil anomaly. So we're on there at the moment drilling, so look forward to some news in the very, very near future. Next slide, just touching on the other prospects. Vulcan, that an EM plate sitting underneath a 23% rock chip on a Gossan rich in copper. The soil anomaly is a pretty exciting target. Next slide, please. Then we've got the Vulcan North, and if you look at the bottom left-hand image there, that cross-section of Scuddles, the discovery story around that is based around a pulse EM, a very early, late 70s version of that, and that picked up the copper lens, not the zinc. Zinc doesn't show up in EM. But more importantly, we had a very, there's virtually no anomalism in the drilling directly above it. So it's kind of off to the hanging wall position side. That, you can see that 0.1% zinc envelope. But you can see very similar Vulcan North and Vulcan West, the same sort of picture. You know, you've got EM plates underneath that. So they look very, very similar to the Scuttle story. Next slide, please. We've also then just touch on Coolant very briefly before I finish up. But the Coolant is an anomaly which is very similar to the Tampia area, which is just to the north of us. And we've got some results up to 400 ppm gold. So we're looking forward to drilling that next. And next slide. And just to recap, that area there was pegged originally for nickel PGEs. And we've got Anglo America drill all around it, post the Julimar discovery. And that's pretty much it for me today. Looking forward to hearing from questions there. You know, the Chalice story is something that will emerge over time. And certainly we're looking forward to that first shipment at Riley, putting results out for Golden Grove North, and then obviously looking very forward to drilling at Coolant. Julimar will start to see Chalice delivering some news to the market early next year, and then later we'll, with the funding from Riley, look at maybe getting the Mount Lindsay project, depending on success of Julimar, etc. Build the tin tungsten mine in a say 2 to 3 years time. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Andrew. You've got a lot to get through there, so sorry to rush you. Just on Chalice, there's a question here in that regard. They're obviously a big name that have done well. Do you have a start date for the Chalice participation at Thor, or is it still intended for later this year?
Look, Chalice have got onto the ground now, and what I didn't sort of say is that we've already done the EM. We've done a fair bit of soil sampling at the surface, but we were looking for VMS targets. They're heading with, I suppose, a view on a nickel PGE in it, because that was only discovered earlier this year. We hadn't looked at the project from that perspective. So Chalice will use their expertise to look at that, and you know, I'm expecting them to be on the ground doing, you know, ground-based type work, maybe more soil sampling, and then hopefully move on to land-based EM. The airborne EM we flew, we got 6 kilometres of anomalies at the southern end, which is very similar to what Chalice have at Julimar. But the northern end, we ran into some infrastructure like power lines and TV transmitters or telephone transmitters. So I expect them to sort of get that groundwork done, and hopefully we'll see the rig out there in the first half of next year.
And of course, you're a geologist by trade, which I didn't mention in the introduction. So how do you prioritise your CapEx between these projects and obviously different resources?
Look, yeah, that's a, you know, a constant challenge for the company. We do have a lot of projects. You know, it can be a blessing or a curse. At the moment, this market seems to be more of a blessing. We've got, you know, I suppose that quite boring period where you're building an iron ore mine, and as a consequence, you know, in fact, we're doing exploration at Golden Grove North is, you know, kept the interest in the share price, which is great. The building won't take long, for, you know, like I said, 3 months. But you know, the idea is that, you know, we're drilling away. The last raising, we sort of put up around about $1 million aside to look at Coolant and Golden Grove North. But Riley's where all the other the remainder of the funds are going. And you know, this is the reason why we did a joint venture with Chalice as well, because we have a plethora of projects, and if you want to try to realise some of these assets early, and you want to get sort of guys who are experienced with especially in Chalice's case, with the work they did at Julimar, then you know, we can bring those discoveries forward. And we've got a 30% hold position there, where you know, if we make that $30 million, for example, out of Riley, then, you know, do we use it to build the Mount Lindsay mine, or do we use it to hold you know, a 30% position in the Julimar project, in that Julimar lookalike project down at on our southwest tenement? So yeah, it's the priorities continue to move. If I get, you know, 10 meters of massive sulfide tomorrow from Golden Grove North, then we'll have to jiggle things around and see what the focus is. But get the funding sorted for Riley, and then things should move forward from there.
And from an outsider looking in, is the funding, where does the funding come from, and is the plan to have JVs and those sort of developments moving forward?
Yeah, I think the question broke a little bit, but look, the JV going forward for Chalice, I think your question was about, Tim?
Oh, about how do you fund all these different projects moving forward? Is it a JV strategy sort of?
Well, look, in terms of like all situations, Tim, it depends very much on funding at the time. It depends on the asset. Like in the case of Thor, it was going to require severe drill out. There's a lot of targets down there, and it's sort of like requires a fair spend, which the company was pulled towards developing the Riley iron ore mine, and the idea was to generate funds so we can sort of minimise dilution for shareholders. If we're successful at Golden Grove North, it'll depend, I suppose, on the level of that success and whether we can go it alone. Obviously, we've got the neighbours there in earmark capital at Golden Grove would be very interested in extending their mine life down there, so that's an opportunity for us potentially. Or at Coolant, if we come across something decent there, then likewise. But we always consider these things and trying to obviously get the best bang for our buck for the shareholder.